Hello YouTube friends, here we have biggest project I've completed up to date, or will complete up to date. This is an amplifier which was pulled from a console, a Stromberg Carlson ASR 120. I saved all the components here, so we have our tuner receiver, alright, which also I believe had a phono preamp in it. This is the faceplate which went on to this control panel here, like this. I'm going to save this and do something with it a little bit later. Then we have our, obviously, the control panel with RCA outs. And at the time these were all connected together, but it just became really difficult to try and test stuff with all of it mangled up, so I decided to just go ahead and separate them and decide if I wanted to keep them later. This is the meat of it though. This is our amplifier unit, and I've gone in and done some things. There used to be a connector here which I discarded. I decided to film it after starting a little bit later, so you know, it just has a head start on us. Okay, I'm going to flip this over here. So it looked pretty clean inside. When I did the initial testing, it was very noisy, and it's largely because the power capacitors in here in this can were just completely shot by the time, you know, this thing was sitting out in the desert for, you know, it could have been 40, 60 years even. It was out there, so just enough time to get weathered. Pretty bad. And you can even see like the resistors here are pretty shot. Could just be dust, but I think that's a lot of heat and stuff. And so anyway, we got the whole project is gonna be, I'm gonna really kind of reimagine this whole thing, and I'm going to take off this board and repopulate it here with some newer capacitors and kind of redesign. I'm going to, instead of doing a can capacitor, I'm going to lay them all out in here nice and good looking. Now the other thing that the main thing is I have, you know, for some reason these old power cables are non-polarized. I mean, kind of. You can see on, it's going to be tough if I can get to focus. You can see on these old power cables which side is negative. Yeah, you can see this one's negative. It has a ridge. I'm trying to get to focus. It has a ridge there. See that? That's the negative, or excuse me, not negative. The neutral. Don't quote me on that. There's a neutral, and this would be the hot. You see the ridge there. Anyway, it's tough to tell because it's non-polarized, and so I got a new cable which is polarized, so we're gonna replace that and just do a bunch of other stuff to it. So let's begin. So first things first, I do have the original schematic, which was very helpful when trying to figure out how to replan this whole thing. But in the end, as I said, I decided to redo the can capacitor and replace it with these, you know, individual caps. I just felt like even though the can was going to be fairly inexpensive, for about the same price I could get what I believe would be higher grade components that would last a little bit longer, and it's fun. So anyway, so I have this whole thing replanned out. And we can just kind of, let's look at each piece individually. So the first main thing is going to be rebuilding the actual power section. So in the original schematic, you have the hot end that comes straight in through the an accessory outlet here, into the transformer, then to the fuse, and then it's routed through one of these safety caps, which is right here, 1400 volt. 0.01 UF, and then it actually routes out here. I actually just swapped this switch on here for testing purposes, so this is not what it originally came with, but then it runs through these. This is still This, I guess it would technically be part of the neutral line of it, but it runs out through here into that 9-pin unit and comes back around. And anyway, that was just a little bit too, I don't know, I didn't really like that idea, and I wanted to move this switch up to the front here. So what I've done is I reworked the whole power system. I think it's going to be a little bit safer, and so instead I have it going from the hot, it comes up to the socket, which I'm going to keep because I'm going to plug my phono preamp into that. Then I have it going to the switch, and then after the switch I have the fuse. So that way the hot wire, you know, I can change the fuse with it still being plugged in and not get zapped. And then it comes through here, and I'm going to keep the safety cap, and I think it's probably still good. But this way, I've also redrawn it how it's going to look in here. So what I'm going to do is, instead of having this fuse that's soldered in here, which is a complete pain in the rear, I'm going to run the hot into the socket, to the one side of the switch, flip it on this other side, and this is going to be where the fuse is going to be. So I'm going to put the fuse probably right here. In and out of the transformer and through the safety cap into neutral, and good to go. So that's how we're going to redo the power section. Okay, next up is going to be getting the power filtering capacitors situated. This is a pretty big chunk here. Consumed a lot of time to get this nailed down, but you know, I think it's going to be worth it in the end. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace basically every component that I can, while still trying to make it as true to what the original heart is, just upgrading components or updating components when possible. But I'm going to try to keep the same tubes. I think the tubes, they all lit up fine when I tested it. So I'm going to keep the same tubes. And I'm going to clean up some of the wire. I think, you know, I don't even know what that substance is, but I don't know. I would like to keep as much of the original wire as I can, but when I see that, I go, is that like electrolyte, or... I just wouldn't put my tongue up on that. I would put that in my body. So I don't know. I think I'm going to try to get cleaned off or something. And then also just the wiring. Yeah, it gets the job done, but it's kind of ugly, and I want to tighten that up. Maybe shorten some leads, stuff like that. So anyway, I'll make sure to include this picture if you guys wanted to, you know, replicate this in some way. Next is the output transformer leads just hang outside. You know, in the console, this wouldn't be a big deal because these were, yeah, I should have taken pictures, I know. But, you know, this is just not something I want to have. So I'm going to drill some additional holes in here, run them back through, and I'm probably going to run them out of the sides. If I can run them out of the back, that would be ideal. But it just depends. Right now, you know, there's a lot of space that's being taken up here. So we'll see. As it stands, I have new plugs that I'm going to do on this side. Because I'm going to make room for the, I want to do a line in, and then also a line out, because I like to do additional powered subwoofers. So I'm going to put those in right here, and I'm going to run the line in along this side into the two you know, gain stages. And I'm going to try to keep it a 7199 as the tube, just because, like I said, I want to try to keep it original as much as I can. And doing a 7199 is good enough. It's a cool tube. It does the job. So, yeah, that's the next phase. What else do we have? Okay, next is going to be the electrolytic coupling capacitors. Now, this is going to be a pain in the butt. As you can see, there's some bulging there. So these guys are... yeah, they've had it, you know, they're done. And I checked some of the resistors. just with my little multimeter to get their ohm rating, and some of them are pretty close still, but you know, they're old and the values have drifted, and so it's time to get new ones. What I'm gonna do is, now this is almost very similar to what the original schematic was. I just wanted to get it visualized so that I can, and I'm rearranging them to a degree. Actually, looks like pretty similar to how I had reimagined. I didn't look at this when I drew on this. I just kind of followed the schematic and then laid it out in a way that it seems just kind of like feasible or made sense to me. Because the one change that I'm going to do is this, as it stands, has no master volume, which is not going to work with me. I want to make sure that I can turn up my phono gain stage independently. So not just, you know, this is a 140 watt amp, so if you just turn it up just very slightly on your phono stage, it's going to be blasting. So what I figured I can do is, on the schematic there, the 7199, it has its input right here at 7. This is a right in. Comes out of the plate here. It gets filtered, and eventually, right before it comes into the phase inverter at 9, I actually have a stereo volume pot, 200K nice pot that I'm going to put in here that is, yeah, like I said, pre-phase inverter, post-first gain stage, that I think is going to be nice. I would have done it after the phase inverter, but since it's a push-pull, I'd have to get like a 4-section pot, and that was going to be just too much for me. So anyway, I think that'll turn out pretty nicely. So let's do a quick update. I have all but one of the holes drilled. I have here, this is the hole for the on-off switch. Okay, I have my fuse drilled and I put that in there. I also got my new power cable and grommet installed. Then over here I have the I decided to do the 2 speaker terminals. I had enough cable that I decided to do them here. And then I have also the line in and line out. The only other one I need to do is going to be right here, which is going to be for the volume pot. It just hasn't come in the mail yet, so we're not going to be done today, but that's okay. Alright, I'll catch in with you once I have the power system nailed down. So I have the power system completely finished now. As you can see, the black wire, just like before, our black hot wire is going to come up to our secondary here. Then it's going to continue along here to this switch. It's going to come in this side, out here, where it continues along to the fuse. Okay, from the fuse into the power transformer, out of the power transformer to our neutral, which is also hooked up to an AB safety capacitor to ground. And then the other side comes out here on neutral, so then that's good to go. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in all of my jacks. So I started and I realized I ought to do an update. So next step is going to be putting these jacks in, taking the output from the output transformers, and I'm going to put those in here. This is going to be my in and out, and I'll catch up with you later. Time for another update. I have completed the output transformer terminals. So we have our speaker outs completed, and then I just reconnected the rectifier tube. The rectifier tube from the transformer, there was just a lot of extra slop, so I cut that short. Now take a look at what I did for my line in and line out, which was basically, I have my line in and the signal gets split to another terminal here. And then these wires come along here this way to pin 7 there, pin 7 here, and then I also re-established a nice ground terminal for both the input, the signal, but also for the whole pegboard, which we're going to completely repopulate later on. So I have a nice good ground connection for it. And here we have it. This is with the power section completed. Gosh, I mean, it looks kind of like a mess maybe to you, but I look at that and I just see that is incredible. All of the connections are really nice. Some of the issues that I popped into was that this lead from the power transformer was a little bit too short. I didn't cut it too short, that's how it came. So I had to have some extra lead off of the first power capacitor here. But all the other connections were made fairly nicely. This resistor here, I gave some extra insulation so that it could get tangled up in there and not actually be tangled up. And then I used an old resistor to mount it on so that it was able to stay up off of the chassis. And I think I may just leave these. I mean, they are loose, so I should probably get some kind of silicone or something to, like, you know, hold them down, but I don't know, we'll see. The other challenge that I came into was with the final series here with this 50 UF filter. Initially I had planned on it coming up and over, but it did not fit nicely, so I had to bring it down, which was a pain to get with this extra 50 UF capacitor here, but it worked out. And then I have everything installed and grounded on this terminal here, or I created this. It was an old strip from the old FM unit. I took that off of there and then installed it here, drilled another hole. Because, I mean, you can ground it to the power transformer, but I've heard that can make it kind of noisy, so I decided not to. Alright, so what's next is I'm gonna, like I said, I think I'm gonna, you know, you can see it kind of moving around, and that just doesn't seem right to me, so I'm gonna ground it, maybe even if it's just like gluing another old filter there. It just, that's not good enough, so we'll tighten that down. Next up is I'm gonna take off this perf board here and repopulate all of the stuff and see how that turns out. So check in with you again later. So one thing I wanted to point out before I moved any further was that I was able to remove the old board, and I thought it was just going to be point to point, but it's not. It has this kind of proto printed circuit board, which is going to be helpful, but also was a real pain because there was a lot of extra solder on there. And it's just, you know, I kind of changed the design slightly, so we'll see. I think I'll probably just keep the big ground strip that they have there, so that's kind of convenient. But, you know, as far as this side, I don't know. Anyway, I just wanted to show you if you're expecting to, you know, start on it. Here's another update for you. I did decide to go ahead and keep the printed circuit board here because it just was, I don't know, I guess it's kind of like if it's not broken, don't try to fix it type of thing. And I found that I could follow the manufacturer's layout and it was still pretty good. So the only difference is, instead of depending on the printed circuit board foil, I converted everything to point, basically. So all the components are directly tied to one another, and then I'll be able to take in the connecting wires, and I haven't quite tightened all of these down yet, so I'll be able to just put the connecting wire in between. You know, for example, there's that one. See how there's my index finger here? Well, look where this is pointing. Okay, see how there's the like gap there where it's not quite tightened? So my plan is I'm going to put the connecting wires in between here, and then tighten it around, and then I'll solder it together that way. So just kind of, I don't know, I'm always more of a fan of point to point instead of printed circuit board anyway. But isn't that cool? Even in 1961s, when they started doing this type of stuff, make it easier on the assembly line workers or whoever was putting this together. Quick word about coupling capacitors. Make sure that you test which side is the shielded side. I went ahead and did all that. So you can see some of them it's on the left side, some of them it's on the right side. So don't just assume one or the other. You know, you want to make sure that you do that right, and that'll cut down on hum and other interference and make your amp a little bit quieter. And another circuit board update for you. So I was a bit of an overachiever, I guess you could say. I first, repopulated the whole board, converted it. So I just didn't want to depend on the printed circuit board strip. So I just made all of those connections individually, and then I went ahead and labeled all of them so that when I actually install the board, it'll be a lot easier. So yeah, just wanted to show you that. Show you some of the work. So as a quick recap, we redid the power system here to have a nice switch in front, repopulated this circuit board, installed our, you want to see a nice pot, that's what it looks like. The power system I believe is going to work well. We got our pots and RCA, so let's test it out. It works perfectly. Make sure that that you do have the, if you're testing an amp out for the first time, make sure that you run it through a light bulb current limiter. And if you'd like, I have a video on my page about how to make one. And so if it's a tube amp, make sure that it's already connected to speakers before you turn it on. So after I had tested it, I realized that there was two things that still needed to be done to really be the piece de la resistance, the je ne sais quoi, if you will, of this amp. The first is I ordered a crummy amp jewel and decided to just go ahead and get the metal one because it was originally plastic, and I thought there's no way, this thing deserves more than plastic. So I got that installed, and I did had to grind that down just slightly in order to get it to fit. So if you're planning on doing that, just know, it's got to be just a little bit bigger. I think I may have already shown these on-off switches that I took from the original plate, and then the volume knob. But the real excellent thing is underneath. I cut a plexiglass bottom for this so that it's safe, so that kiddos don't touch it, and also it just looks fantastic. So anyway, thanks so much for watching this. I do hope that you can help me out by, if you've been impressed, pushing the like button and subscribing to see more amp conversions. Thanks. Bye.